Your son is 15. One night, something goes wrong. The next morning, your phone rings. Not a juvenile detention center, an adult jail. The prosecutor decided your 15-year-old should be charged as an adult. And when the lawyer explains what that actually means, your stomach drops. Because it doesn't mean a hearing and some probation and a record that gets sealed when he turns 18. It means an adult courtroom, an adult judge, an adult jury. And if he's convicted, adult prison, where 15-year-olds get housed with 40-year-old men who have been in the system their whole lives. He had been running with the wrong crowd. You knew it. You had been worried about it. You had the talks. Nobody planned for it to go this far, but it did. And now you are standing at the entrance to a system that was never built with your son in mind. That's not a hypothetical. That happened to families last week. It will happen to families this week, and most of them had no idea it was even possible until it was already happening to them. Here's what the system doesn't tell you. In most states in this country, a prosecutor can decide, on their own, sometimes without even going before a judge, that your child should be treated like an adult. Not because of who they are, not because of their whole story, but because of the charge on the paper in front of them. In some states, it's automatic. Certain charges, certain ages, and your kid is in adult court. No hearing, no argument. No one asking whether your son was a victim himself, whether he had a learning disability, whether he'd ever been in trouble before. The law just flips a switch. And black and brown kids are the ones getting flipped on the most. This is what we're talking about today. Not theory, not policy. The real process, what happens, how it happens, who it targets, and what you can actually do if it happens to your family. Most people think the juvenile justice system and the adult criminal system are just different rooms in the same building. They're not. The juvenile system was built, at least in theory, on the idea that young people can change, that their brains aren't fully developed, that punishment should include rehabilitation. So when a kid goes through juvenile court, there are protections built in. Records that can be sealed, sentences designed around treatment and education, hearings that are often closed to the public. The whole system is supposed to ask, how do we help this kid not come back? The adult system asks a completely different question. What does this person deserve to suffer? When your child gets transferred to adult court, every protection disappears. Their case becomes public record. Employers, landlords, anyone with an internet connection can see it for the rest of their life. Reporters can sit in the courtroom. If they're convicted, their sentence is determined by the same guidelines used for grown adults with long criminal histories. And if they're sentenced to prison, they go to prison. Not a youth facility, not a treatment program, a state penitentiary. Some states have units for younger inmates, but the research is clear. Teenagers in adult prisons face extreme rates of violence, sexual assault, and psychological trauma. They're more likely to be put in solitary confinement. They're less likely to get education or mental health services. And when they get out, because most of them do eventually get out, they're more likely to reoffend than kids who went through the juvenile system. The system that was supposed to protect your child just made everything worse. Darius was 16 when it happened. 16. No prior record, never been in trouble a day in his life. One night goes sideways. Wrong place, wrong crowd. A fight that escalated into something nobody planned. He gets arrested. His mother, Renee, is at the jail before sunrise, terrified, but telling herself, he's a minor. He's never been in trouble. They'll see that. What she didn't know, what nobody told her, is that it doesn't always matter. Because in Florida, where Darius lived, the prosecutor has a power that most families have never heard of. It's called direct file. And it means the prosecutor can look at a charge, decide it belongs in adult court, and file it there. No hearing. No judge weighing Darius's school records or his mental health history, or the fact that this was the first time he'd ever seen the inside of a police car. No one asking whether Darius was a victim in that situation himself. Just a decision, made in an office, by someone who has never met your son. Renee found out at the arraignment. She thought she was walking into juvenile court. She walked into criminal court. And the look on Darius's face when he understood what room he was in, that's the look that never left her. That's one way it happens. But there are two others, and you need to know all three. The second way is a judicial waiver. This is actually the version where families have the most protection, because at least there's a hearing. A juvenile court judge has to look at the evidence, look at the child, and make a decision out loud. They're supposed to weigh things like how serious was the offense? What's the kid's background? Do they have mental health issues? Can they be rehabilitated? There's a fight to be had here. A lawyer can show up and argue. It's not good, but someone has to make a choice in front of witnesses. The third way is the one that hits like a wall. It's called statutory exclusion, and it means the state already decided, before your child was ever arrested, that certain charges automatically belong in adult court. No hearing, no waiver, no one weighing anything. If the charge qualifies and your kid is old enough, sometimes that means 14, sometimes 13, depending on the state, they go directly to adult court the moment the charge is filed. The law already made the decision for them. Renee didn't know any of this existed. She thought the juvenile system would catch her son. She thought being a minor meant something. She found out what it actually meant when she watched them walk Darius into an adult courtroom in handcuffs and realized that nobody in that building was going to see a 16-year-old kid. They were only going to see the charge. Let's be honest about who this system is landing on, because the data isn't ambiguous. Black youth are transferred to adult court at dramatically higher rates than their white peers, for the same charges, in the same jurisdictions, with the same prior records. A white kid and a black kid commit the same offense. The white kid stays in juvenile court. The black kid gets direct filed. The white kid gets a treatment program. The black kid gets a prison sentence. This has been documented in state after state. It is not a coincidence, and it is not a mystery. It is a pattern built into how prosecutors exercise their discretion, how judges weigh their factors, how a system that claims to help children actually works when those children are black. And if you are watching this thinking your family is not in that category, different neighborhood, different situation, this is someone else's problem, I want to ask you something. Do you know what your state's minimum age for direct file is? In some states, it is 14. In others, it is 13. Do you know which charges trigger statutory exclusion in your state? Meaning, no hearing, no argument, adult court automatically? A traffic stop that escalates, a fight at school, a Friday night that gets out of hand. Any of these can be the moment this chain starts. The families who say this could never happen to them are exactly the families who are least prepared when it does. The system does not warn you in advance. You find out the same way Renee did, standing in the wrong courtroom, trying to understand why your child is being walked past you in handcuffs. And the families who absorb the worst of it are the ones who couldn't afford a private attorney, the ones whose public defender had 200 cases and 40 minutes to spend on their child, the ones who didn't know what a transfer hearing was or that they had a right to fight it. What makes this even harder to sit with is who these kids often are. When you look at the backgrounds of teenagers who get transferred to adult court, you find a lot of children who were victims first. Kids who grew up in homes where violence was the only thing they ever saw modeled. Kids who needed mental health services for years and never got them because the wait lists were too long and their families were too exhausted, and the system that was supposed to help never showed up. The system failed them over and over. And now it's going to finish the job by sending them somewhere that will make everything worse. If you get that call, if someone tells you your child is being charged as an adult or that a transfer is being considered, I need you to hear this. Not as information, as something urgent. You don't have time to process it slowly. The window to fight a transfer is narrow. In some cases, it's days. And what happens in that window will shape the rest of your child's life. And the third thing, maybe the most important, is this. Even if the transfer goes through, you are not done fighting. Reverse transfer motions can bring a case back to juvenile court. Sentencing is a whole separate battle, Appeals exist. There are attorneys and organizations who do nothing but fight these cases for families who thought they had nothing left. The system wants you to believe the decision is final. It wants you exhausted and defeated and ready to accept whatever comes next. Don't accept it. Your child needs you in the fight, not in the grief. There will be time for grief later. Right now, there is still something to do. There's a boy, I'll call him Marcus, who was 16 when he was direct filed into adult court in Florida. He'd been in one fight that went too far. No prior record. 2 years before, he'd been on the honor roll. His mother had spent a year trying to get him mental health services. She could see him pulling away. She could feel it. But the waiting lists were 6 months long, and she was working 2 jobs, and there was never enough time or money to make it happen. Marcus still had plans. Quiet ones. The kind a 16-year-old keeps to himself because saying them out loud feels too big. He wanted to study engineering. His math teacher had told him twice in front of the whole class that he was one of the sharpest students she had ever taught. He had written it down in a notebook he kept in his room. Engineer. He didn't know exactly what that path looked like yet, but he knew he had time to figure it out. He had no idea he was 2 weeks away from losing that time. The prosecutor didn't see any of that. The prosecutor saw a charge that qualified for direct file, and he filed it. Marcus is 24 now. He spent 6 years in an adult prison. He went in as a kid who made one terrible mistake and came out with a permanent record. PTSD from things he saw and survived inside, and no diploma. His mother, aged 10 years and 6. She still carries the weight of it, the guilt of not being able to stop it, the grief of watching her son grow up inside a cage, the exhaustion of rebuilding something from what's left. Nothing about what happened to Marcus was inevitable. It was a choice, made by a prosecutor in about 5 minutes, with no hearing, no argument, no one in that room who gave a single thought to who Marcus was as a human being. That choice is being made every day, in courthouses in your state, in your city, possibly on your block. Share this video. Tell a parent. Tell a young person. Because the family sitting next to you might get that call tomorrow morning. And if they know what you know right now, just maybe, they have a fighting chance that Marcus never got.